Hello, everybody. It's me, your spooky neighborhood host, Jacob. And let's get into some HalloQueenery. Look, it's Halloween season. I'm a queen. I love everything ooky, spooky, spiritual, and that's what the whole month of October is going to be dedicated to. So, y'all strap in. It's HalloQueen episode 1. Monsters in the Closet with Chris Moore. Chris is a acclaimed writer, director, actor, you name it, he's got it. And he has quite the knack for scary shit, okay? Let's be honest. So, this conversation is fantastic. I loved every single minute of it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you will get to see every single minute of it. If you are just listening on any of your podcast platforms, I will let you know that some of it has been cut for time, but say la vie. Hey, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Out in the Woods podcast. Hit subscribe, ring the bell. You know, like they say, leave a comment, let me know how I'm doing. Honestly, y'all, on a real note, I really am trying to get more audience interaction. So, please interact with me. Please talk to me. Let me know what you want to see, what you want to hear. You know, if you want me to jump off a bridge, I'll jump off a bridge. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. So, without further ado, let's get creepy. Hello, Chris.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going really good. It's a nice, dreary Monday. That means fall is right around the corner.
Um,
Um,
exactly.
October is actually when this is going to premiere. So, you're actually
Cool.
my first guest of spooky season.
Yay! Oh, that makes me feel happy. Yay!
Yes,
It's the
yes.
most wonderful time of the year. Love it.
Yes, it is. God, yes, it is for many reasons. This is like, Pride Month is technically in June, but I think that October is like second Pride Month, really.
I can see that. I can
Um,
see it.
so this is Christopher Wesley Moore, or Chris Moore, if you're nasty. And
Whichever. I'm fine with whatever. I
he is an acclaimed and awarded director of film. And yeah, I am so excited to pick his brain, guys. So, Chris, if you want to introduce yourself, maybe where are you from? What do you do?
Sure. Yeah, I am Chris Moore, Christopher Wesley Moore, if you want to get technical. And I am from Jackson, Mississippi, born and raised. And I am a filmmaker and actor and writer and all kinds of stuff like that. That's creative, I guess.
He's like a quadruple threat.
I just like to do a lot of stuff. I'm just if I had to sort of distill it, I would just say I'm a storyteller because I that's why I like to do everything that I like to do is because I'm just telling stories.
So where do you fall on the LGBT plus spectrum?
Oh, I'm just plain old gay. I don't know. Just meat and potatoes, classic gay, I guess. I don't
Gayanays,
know.
as we
Yeah,
like to
just
say.
just gay. I mean, more power to everybody else, but I'm this is just me.
We're default. When did you first know that you were different?
Mm. Well, that's a little bit harder to answer. I mean, I was always kind of interested in like staying in my room and making up stories with my action figures, and instead of like going outside and playing with footballs and stuff like that, that just wasn't my thing. I mean, I
Same.
tried sports, but I was awful. I was just I was an abomination and just wasted everybody's time. And and I loved fairy tales and stuff like that. And I think by the time I got to be 5 or 6, my parents were a little concerned, like, oh, he's going to be a little different. And but the thing was that I wasn't into like the princess kind of crap. It was always the bad guys that fascinated me. I loved the kind of
Mm.
psychology of what would make someone do something like that, you know. So
Mhm.
I loved, Maleficent and the Evil Queen and stuff
Mhm.
like that because they were fascinating. They were the ones that were actually driving the stories. It wasn't Snow White and whatever her name was, Princess Aurora or
Aurora. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, it's like they were kind of boring, but then these villains were fascinating and
Mhm.
actually getting stuff done. And I was like, wow, okay. And and so I guess they kind of thought that if I kept going down that route, I'd probably turn out to be gay. And I guess the joke was on them because it was just going to happen no matter what anyway.
Right. I
Um,
mean,
which I always think is so funny because it's like because you hear parents talk about that all the time, like, oh, if he doesn't stop doing that, he's gonna grow up to be gay, and then it just happens no matter what.
no
So
matter, you can't stop it.
it's
At
yeah.
least you were just taking the interesting route, you know?
Exactly. But I do sometimes think like if I hadn't been exposed to this or I was exposed to that earlier, what would have changed? Like what
I
would I've realized I was gay sooner or maybe later or like what would have happened, you know?
I totally get that because when I was young, my parents tell me this all the time, and I do remember my favorite movie, and they told me like this was the only way we could get you to shut up. We'd put you in front of the TV and we'd throw 101 Dalmatians on the TV. But I mean, I was destined to be gay because Cruella DeVille. I mean, she's just a fucking icon. She is,
Yeah. Hmm.
especially Glenn Close as Cruella DeVille.
Oh, come on.
Look at
Yes.
her. Look at her fashion. Of
Hmm.
course, I didn't root for her. I mean, I still thought, I don't want those puppies to die. But
Oh, of course not.
but damn, bitch, like she was rocking every single. She made black and white so trendy. I mean, she
I
really
know.
did.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a steady stream of 101 Dalmatians and Jurassic Park. So Laura Dern, thank
Oh.
you.
Oh, Laura Dern, she's one of my favorites.
Did
I
you
could watch
see?
her read the phone book.
Yes. Did you see
Ugh.
the oh my God, was it the San Francisco gay male choir doing that song about Laura Dern?
No,
Oh my
that sounds
God.
wonderful.
It was just a song dedicated to Laura Dern, and it's just amazing. If I find it, I'll have to send it to you.
Please do because I adore her and I just think like everything that she does is just genius
It
and
is. She can't stop. She cannot be
no,
stopped.
mm-mm. Nor should she be stopped.
Nor
I mean,
should
really,
she. Do not stand in Laura
keep on
Dern's way.
going.
So help me, goddess.
Keep going, Laura.
So what
Oh,
was
dear.
we kind of got into this, I mean, talking about, parents being like, well, if he keeps doing
Right.
this, but what was growing up queer in the South like for you?
Well, I remember a few problems, but not anything that was particularly awful in terms of bullying because of that. I think, because I kind of had a stutter, and so that was kind of I was sort of bullied for that, and then I was just kind of weird in general. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if a lot of it was based on my sexuality, um, but I do remember there was this one kid in middle school. I think it was 7th or 8th grade, and he kept like coming up to me and being like, "Hey, Chris, you want to fuck me?" And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what is wrong with you?" Like, I didn't
God.
even know. Like, and I'm like, "Are you trying to see if I'm gay? Like, do you want me to say sure so that then you'll just be like, yeah, he's gay, everybody?" Like, I was never sure what his
Yeah.
in the game was there, but that's probably the closest thing I can think of. And then I think the most troubling part though was just knowing that in the South, being gay, being different in any way really is usually calls for some kind of concern with a lot of people, and just
Hmm.
knowing that if I was going to actually live openly, there were going to be a lot of people who weren't going to be thrilled with that choice.
Hmm.
Um and so always kind of hearing things from my classmates or adults or my family about, oh well, she's a lesbian, and that is just so wrong. I don't know why they do that. That is just disgusting,
Mm-hmm.
or he's gay. I don't know why there's that gay kiss on screen. I mean, that's just oh
Uh-huh.
my, it's so disgusting. And so I would hear stuff like that about how disgusting and immoral it was and all that stuff, and that did a kind of a toll on my head, I think,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of knowing, okay, crap, at some point I'm gonna have to rip off the band-aid and it's gonna probably suck, but I just have to do it, so that was probably, I think, the most uh, troublesome behavior that I encountered in the South, was just the whole um telling you that being gay wasn't acceptable thing.
Yeah,
um
yeah. And that, once again, I've talked about this before, but that kind of internalizes itself. It really
mhm,
does, because then you have to go through your own journey of being like, well, is this something I can change before it's
yeah,
too late?
right,
Like, is,
mhm,
am I, how am I going to reduce the damage enough? And it's not fun. It's psychologically taxing. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, it's like a common thread. That's why I always ask. I mean, it's a common thread, but everyone has their own different experience, I guess,
Right. Yeah.
with the adults in the room, as it
Yeah.
were. I remember even like in high school, like some high school football coaches, I mean, it would be a joke for them to like look, because they would always teach history, which, by the way, y'all, I don't know if this is everywhere, but in the South, if you are a coach, you teach history, or
That's so
social
true.
studies.
So true.
Um, and so I remember a lot of coaches would like, they'd be like, they would use gay as an insult, like
Hmm.
in class, like
Yeah.
on the boys, like they would be like, "What are you, gay?" Like, and it's like, oh my God, like it's. Well, at the time it was 2011. I don't know, but Obama is president. Why are you doing this?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's why it's taken me such a long time to even accept the word queer,
Mhm.
because when I was a kid, that was a slur. I mean, it was like, oh,
Yes.
well, he's a bit
Yes.
queer, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be that, because that doesn't sound good,
Hmm.
But now it's kind of been, I guess, reclaimed a bit. But I would be lying if I said every time I hear it, I don't kind of go, ugh, ugh, like, to sort of cringe a bit. I don't know why,
Same.
but I just, it's so
It
weird.
it's also, I mean, queer is fine with me, but faggot is one where I'm
So
like,
that's the worst. Yeah.
but the thing is, like, we've generally reclaimed it. Like, I'll watch RuPaul's
Oh
Drag Race
yeah.
and suddenly I'll hear a drag queen go like, that faggot, and I'm like, ah! And
Yeah.
then it's like, wait, no,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, like we're good.
Oh
Like,
God. What's insane is to watch movies, especially from the 80s, where they just throw that around all the time. Like,
yes.
oh, don't talk to him, he's such a fag. And I'm like, whoa, you're supposed to be like the likable guy next door here, and you're just like throwing around fag. I'm like, good Lord.
I'm telling you,
Like, what
look,
the
I
hell?
watching The Sopranos was an experience for me, because I'm like, oh, I love these mafia guys. God,
Yeah.
they're so fag. He was a fag, and I'm like, oh God, oh
I
oh
know. Just like, ugh.
God.
It just gets under my skin. But then at the same time, you do have people in the South who will claim to be more socially liberal,
Hmm.
and they'll say, oh, I love gays. I have all these gay friends, and then they'll vote for someone who's anti-gay, and you're like, you can't have it both ways. And
Yes.
that kind of bothers me. So in some ways, I'd almost prefer someone to just be openly bigoted, so that at least I know, like, well, I'm gonna
Yes.
go on the other side of the street to avoid you, because
Right.
at least then you know where you stand. But with some of these people, it gets kind of it icky, because they'll say one thing and then do something else that will actually hurt their gay friends, and
Exactly.
it's weird.
Well, me and Will, we talked about this last week, and I think we said that the mission statement of the Republican Party should be, "I got mine, fuck you." So that's
I I,
that
I
that's how
mean,
I feel. You know what I mean?
truth in advertising there. That's what it's the sheer selfishness. And the thing is that everybody is a little selfish, and we have to admit it. Of course we are. But it's just the not caring about anything, that
Yes.
it boggles my mind. I don't understand it. I've never understood this to save my life. And it just
Well, it's
Oh,
the trade-off between having to pay more taxes or allow people to have human rights. I mean, it's a very
yeah.
tough choice. So
I'm
we're
like, look,
selfish
I
for
would,
wanting rights. Okay,
yeah,
so
I would gladly pay a little extra, just to make sure people are fed and clothed and just aren't going to be exploited. And I mean, it just seems like it's so much better for the world as a whole. And I think the happier most of us are, the better the world will be. But, we can't have anything with common sense. I don't know.
you're already
God
sounding like
forbid.
a Hollywood elite. But
I know I'm about to be. There's about to be a Pizzagate scandal with me involved. People are going to say
yes,
I drink the blood of children, and
yes.
all that stuff. Yeah,
Ye-
it's
Hashtag save our children from Chris Moore.
yeah.
So
Oh God, wouldn't that be delightful? Just
so
God.
when did you first pick up a camera? And what was your first big
Oh,
creative idea, if you remember?
I mean, the first time I remember picking up the camera was I was in fourth grade and I made a film with my friends after school on the weekends. It was entitled Killer, and
Mm,
it was a Scream fan film. It was
nice.
right after Scream 3, and I was like, I think there should be more to this trilogy. And so we decided to make a fan film expanding the story of Ghostface. And it was just my friends. We each took a turn putting on the costume. My mom would usually record it.
Hmm.
And we didn't have any sort of like fancy editing software. So we couldn't put music in and we couldn't cut it together. So if I wanted a close up, I'd have to say cut, and then she would have to come in closer and then press record again, like in the middle of a scene. It was ridiculous.
Oh my God.
And since yeah, it was awful. And since we couldn't have music, we had to bring a boom box, and she would press play, and it would just be like music from Scream that I recorded off of the TV. I mean, it was so bootleg, it was ridiculous. And so that was my first experience. It was all improvised for the most part. I thought I had some concept of what I was doing, but I most certainly did not. And it was really bad stuff. It was really terrible, but it's instilled some kind of a passion for
Mm,
creating movies, and it just kind of grew. And then from there I did a movie in high school that was called North Woods. That was also kind of improvisational, and this is when I finally learned improv doesn't really work well with movies. So you probably need to actually have a script.
yeah.
And so it was a very it was like a baptism by fire, really, because it was really tough. And that shoot went on from, I think it was like seventh grade to 11th grade.
Oh my
So
God.
imagine that. Yeah, it was like my entire middle slash high school career was basically this one movie. And finally I was just like, you know what, it's probably about as good as it's going to get, considering I never had a script.
Hmm.
So it's done, it's in the can, and I moved on. And but that taught me a lot, so I
Hmm.
don't regret it, but it wasn't always delightful.
I was gonna say it kind of makes me think of Peter Jackson. I know his first film, Bad Taste. It took a couple
Mhm.
of years for them to complete that, if I
Yeah,
remember correctly. Um,
right.
but do copies of Killer exist somewhere out there? Is there hidden away a VHS tape?
um I do think there are pieces of it out there. It was never really fully cut together,
Hmm.
so it's not really like a full. I think I want to say it was shot on like three different VHS-C camcorder tapes.
Mm.
So they're out there somewhere, probably at my mom's house. So I better go destroy them before,
I was actually gonna say Scream 5 is coming out soon. So
Yeah.
honestly, we need to
Mhm.
start a viral campaign to complete the trilogy with Killer. We need to find all the tapes and just splice them together. I mean, how many times did George Lucas edit Star Wars? I mean, you can do the same now.
Oh, like 15,000. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
It would be an experience. I will say this: I was very proud of my scream back in the day. I had a very high pitched, womanly shriek that was quite lovely because at that point my voice hadn't quite ma- ma- matured yet, so I could hit these incredible like high pitched shrieks. I cannot do that now, and I'm really upset about that. So I wish I could. That was a that was a good skill to have.
Just keep
Just
some helium on hand and maybe you
maybe
can
that'll
achieve it
help. Yeah.
again. So so where did horror, well, I was gonna say where did horror come into the mix? That was the next question, but I mean your very first thing was a Scream spinoff. So um
Right.
how long has horror been an obsession for you?
It's always been something that I've been drawn to. Even if I didn't really know it. I had horrible nightmares as a kid, and I was just a huge scaredy cat. And now that it's Halloween time, I think about when I was a kid and I would go to Party City, and in the 90s they had this kind of tent that you would have to walk through to actually get into the store, and they would have this like creepy music playing, and it was this black tent that was totally dark. So you'd walk into complete darkness, and there would be like glow in the dark bats and stuff. And to me, it was terrifying. And
I
it was
remember that
literally,
tent.
yeah, it was about like 5 feet long at the most. I don't know, like it was
Hmm.
nothing. But I was terrified to go in there. But you'd always have to pass through that to get into the
Hmm.
store to get your costume. And then at the register, they would have these cardboard cutouts of the Crypt Keeper and Freddy Krueger, and they would terrify me. Just I
Hmm.
would have the worst nightmares ever just seeing those.
Hmm.
And I seem to remember my first horror film was House of Wax with Vincent Price, because my dad
Oh.
sat me down on a Sunday afternoon. I remember it was on A&E. I remember all of this,
Hmm.
and we watched it, and I made it all the way through, and I was like, oh, I can do this. I just watched an entire horror film, and I'm okay. And then we went to Universal Studios, and we went to the Hitchcock attraction there, which is
Uh-huh.
now gone, which is a shame because it was
Hmm.
wonderful. And it actually showed you how the shower scene in Psycho was um created. And so
Hmm.
that fascinated me. And I went right back home, and my grandmother showed me Psycho, and I was like 6, I think, and
Hmm.
I fell in love with it. I was like, this movie is amazing. And from then on, I would like scour the TV guide every week just to be like, what's on that's like a horror film that I can watch.
Hmm.
And from then on, it just kept growing, and I wasn't allowed to watch anything that was R. So I had to wait
Oh.
until it was on TV, because back in the day they would cut out all the R stuff. And of course now,
Right.
like I watch like, I don't know, the Walking Dead, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so gory. Whereas back in
Right.
the day, I remember watching Halloween for the first time, and they would cut out every shot of a knife. Not a knife going through flesh, just like a knife. Like he
Really?
holds up a knife, and they would cut out the shot. I was like, what? So he's just, what is he doing? Like it was so confusing. But that's how badly they used to cut these movies.
Mm.
And so that's how I saw pretty much all of them. And it was
Oh my
always on
God.
TV, and I would have to sometimes stay up really late. I remember staying up until 2 a.m. on a school night to watch Prom Night.
Oh
I
my
don't know
God.
why. Yeah, so it's like you really had to do the work. Like you had to make sure that you were up at a certain time. It was a whole thing. It was just the planning.
I I remember whenever we didn't get actual like satellite, like actual channels that weren't local channels. I was a
Right.
PBS kid, everybody. So like for the first 5 years of my life, we didn't have Cartoon Network. That was for when you went to Mama's house.
Oh yeah.
But when we moved here, we got satellite, and I remember I remember IFC. That would be part of our
Yeah.
package sometime, and IFC exposed me at a young age to some really good classic horror films. I remember watching Sleepaway Camp on
Wow.
IFC many years ago, and I was like
Oh,
11, and just like the. I'm not gonna spoil the ending, even though like it's been out for
wow.
like I guess almost 40 years now. Like
Mhm.
it's it just blew me away. I was just like, what? But yeah, horror was I was very much a scaredy cat too. I remember when I was very young, the Wicked Witch of the West used to make me
Oh,
hide
yes.
under my
Yes.
bed. Like I was so afraid.
She was terrifying.
She was. I remember we went when I was younger, my uncle used to have a condo in Branson, Missouri, which is like old white people Las Vegas.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Old white
My
Christian Las Vegas.
grandparents used to love Branson.
And yeah, exactly. And there was a wax museum there, and I remember throwing a fit because they had like the Wizard of Oz characters in wax in there. They had like a whole yellow brick road thing, and I remember being so happy walking through because I love the Wizard of Oz. And then I saw the witch, and I just had a complete like breakdown.
Oh my
My
God.
grandmother, she looked around to make sure no one was looking, and then she slapped like the wax figure, and she's like, "Look, it's not real. I smacked it. I'm smacking her."
That is
And
so weird that you said that, because I went to a wax museum in Texas with my family
Mhm,
in like the mid 90s, and there was another Wizard of Oz thing
mhm,
there, and there was the witch, and she was perched on top of the entrance into the next exhibit, I think. And I was
uh-huh.
so terrified because I thought, if she leaps down and grabs
Yes,
me, and
yes.
my parents were like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "But no, she's terrifying. Look at her face. She's a demon." Like, I was terrified of
Right.
her. Oh,
I think the first horror movie that I was able to sit through. I mean, okay, this doesn't. I don't technically count this. Other people would, but I remember watching The Creature of the Black Lagoon.
oh, that
Um,
totally counts. Yeah.
and I remember watching The Twilight Zone.
Oh
Especially
yeah.
every Fourth of July and every New Year's Eve
Hmm.
on the Sci-Fi Channel. They
Yeah.
used to play a marathon, and me and my
Hmm.
dad would just sit down and watch Twilight Zone back to back to back, and
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
I really did. But yeah, and now I'm just like I don't watch a lot of horror movies. I don't watch a lot of movies because I'm just always busy, but I don't know. I really appreciate the genre.
Yeah.
Um in the words of Ghostface, what is your favorite scary movie?
Oh, Carrie, easily. That's to me, that is a perfect film. I
Mm.
wouldn't change a frame. It's not just my favorite scary movie. It's my favorite movie. I just think it's
Oh.
perfect. I think per per the performances, the set design, the
Mhm.
cinematography, the music, everything is just perfect. I don't
Mhm.
And they keep trying to remake it, and I'm like, why? There's no point.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
going to get any better than it was in 1976. It's just not. So I don't understand that. And I'm not someone who's against remakes, but I feel like when it's been done perfectly, I'm just sort of like, what are you going to do? I
Yes.
just don't. I
Well,
don't get it.
it's funny that you say that because that was also going to be my answer.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, I recently saw Carrie. Like last year was the first time I'd ever watched it. I don't know why I didn't watch it before. I don't know. But yeah, I watched it for the first time last year, and I like it. Just I mean, it resonated with me,
Mhm.
and I think it would resonate with a lot of gay queer boys in the South
Absolutely. Yeah.
because I mean, Carrie's mother.
Uh,
I mean, I have my mother is nowhere near like Carrie's mother, but Carrie's mother represents the
yeah,
culture in the South for me, and just
exactly.
how restrictive she was, and how Carrie just wants to be herself and be free,
Hmm.
and just yeah, and I mean, on top of that, the cinematography, everything about it, the acting was always spot on. I mean,
Yeah.
it's perfect. My other answer would be Hereditary, and I know
Oh, I
that
love that
sounds
movie.
it's so generic, but Hereditary is
No,
actually
no.
one of the only scary movies that like actually like chilled me to the bone to the point where like I had to like take time out after to like center myself again because
Oh
like
yeah.
it like the idea of you being responsible for the death of all your loved ones is already
Mhm.
hard enough, but then whenever you add the supernatural element to
Right.
it, and Toni Collette, I mean, she
Where's her
was
Oscar?
robbed. I
Where
was
is her
gonna say
Oscar?
she was absolutely robbed.
Mm-mm.
And it didn't require any jump scares or anything like that.
No, no.
It was pure horror. I mean, every
Yeah.
every shot. I mean, I don't know. It just it's seething with tension. It's great.
That is one of those movies. The first time I watched it, I I didn't know what to think of it. I went to see it opening day and I was just like that was something. I don't
Mhm.
know what that was. And then I went to see it about a month later
Mhm.
and I started to notice all these little things I didn't pick up on the first time. And I was like, that's a good movie. Because a movie that will make you see things in a different light with each viewing, that's brilliant.
Yes.
There's something there. And
Yes.
and I've probably seen it maybe 4 or 5 times now, which is probably the most I can say for most modern horror films. I mean,
Mhm.
it struck me so deeply, and I just think I'm just gonna go ahead and say it's pretty much a masterpiece. I'm just gonna
It
put it out there.
is. It
But
is. I mean, I think another part of what just I mean, just the last shot of the movie
mhm.
and the music, like that beautiful
It's like triumphant, even
celebratory,
though
it's
it's
triumphant,
yeah,
and you're
it's
just like
genius. It's genius.
it's just so juxtaposed for an audience
Yeah,
member. It just like made me like sit there and I felt a mixture of
yeah.
like that was a great movie and I also felt like
Hmm.
really depressed and disturbed and I was
Yeah,
like, "Oh my
I
God."
know. It
Like
was hypnotic.
it
I
was.
really, and I mean, it's over 2 hours long, I think, and yet I
It
was
is.
just transfixed the entire time. And I thought,
Yes.
God, this guy, this Ari Aster guy, like,
I know. I
where
know.
did he come from? Like, he's just. And then I loved his next film, and I can't wait to see
Yes.
what he's going to do next. I mean, he really seems like he's got it. Whatever it is, he's got it.
Have you seen his qualifying oh, I can't remember. I don't know what to call it, but his student film project that he
I've
did.
seen two of them. I saw one short film. I guess he made after he was out of college. I think it was called it's that syndrome, the Munchausen.
Munchausen, I haven't
Yeah,
seen it. I have
that's a
not
good
seen
one. And
it.
then I saw the one something about the
Yes.
Johnsons.
Okay,
That
that's the
okay.
one I was talking
I
about.
saw that
Yes.
in film school. My friend was like, so there's this short movie that this student made, and you have to see it. And I think it was on YouTube at that point.
It
And
still
she
is.
she showed me this, and I was like, who made this movie? Because I love them. It was the most disturbing, bizarre shit I've
Yes.
ever seen in my life. And when I found out that the same guy that made Hereditary also made this, I was like, that makes sense. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes perfect
Now,
sense.
have you listened to his episode of the A24 podcast where he talks about the title he wanted to give it?
No, no.
He wanted to call it Like Father, Like Fun.
Oh, oh, that's so
Yeah, so
gross. Knowing what it's
yeah,
about, I don't.
yeah. So, so yeah. Um,
Oh
what,
God.
what
Well, that was a wise choice to not go with that
I
one. I
was gonna say first that gives away the whole thing, but
don't.
what one more thing while we're on this subject, I have one argument that I have to have with you. I
Okay.
know that you are not a fan really of the most recent Halloween film.
I am not. I'm sorry.
and
This could be a whole episode by itself. I don't know if you want to go there.
all I'm
I
gonna say
I I I have a list. I'm just gonna.
it's his 99 theses.
Yeah.
Um, I will say, okay, H2O. I do think I like H2O more than I like the remake,
Right.
or the reboot, I guess.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the reboot for what it is, and I really am. I'm excited to see what Halloween Kills is going to be like, especially from the teaser trailer. I mean, have
Yeah.
you seen the teaser trailer?
The
It's so
teaser's
effective.
great. The teaser's wonderful. If they're smart, they'll just leave it at that.
Yes.
I would be thrilled with that. I was very excited about it.
Hmm.
David Gordon Green actually went to my school, so I was like, "Oh
Oh.
yay, pride!" Um, and because of what he's done in the past, I was under the impression, oh, this is going to be so great because it's going to be a drama about Laurie Strode now, and it's going to be
Hmm.
really dark and gritty, and Jamie Lee might even get an Oscar. I mean, there's
Hmm.
potential here, and then it was like the movie didn't care about Laurie Strode at all, and I was sort of like, can you kind of cut back to her, because I kind of want to know like what she's been doing for the past 40 years, because it never really tells you what she's been doing.
Well,
Like, so has
yeah.
she just been like shooting mannequins for the past 40 years? Like, what is she actually like? Who was her husband? Where are her parents? Are they
Hmm.
dead? How does she afford this Looney Tunes creation house that has
Yes.
like anvils like falling from the sky? I'm like, how is she doing this? Like this, I need answers. And that would have been a much more interesting film. And instead we got like, the podcasters who I was like, they're all right, but I don't really care.
I
And
was excited for them to die.
the
Um,
doctor was so annoying. I was like, what's his point? And then all the kids were just kind of boring except the babysitter. I liked her, and I was like, why couldn't she have been the granddaughter? Like at least she had like a personality.
I actually
That was kind of my problem.
I love the concept of the Doctor as kind of being an antithesis to Dr. Loomis, though. I
Mhm.
think I really appreciated that. And it did have good cinematography, I
Oh
think.
yeah, no, I think
You
it's
know.
beautifully shot.
Hmm.
Michael, his mask finally looks good for the first time in
Hmm.
40 fucking years. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know why they can't get this mask
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Every movie, it's like, what did they do to his face? Like, it looks so stupid. And John Carpenter came back and did the music, which is
Yes.
fabulous.
Yes.
So it's like there are good parts, and I
Hmm.
I do think it's a much better shot film than H2O, which I thought was a little too bright and kind of glossy. But
It looked like a
um,
music video at
it
some
did,
points, like the
and
hallway scene
yeah,
where like the
hmm
wind is blowing the
yeah,
curtains and
yeah. I was
everything.
like, so Creed's gonna come out and start to sing. It was it was it,
Yeah.
it was a bit much, and but I think the story for H2O was better. I think it had more to do with Laurie kind of trying to make her way through
Yes.
life again. But yeah, I mean, and God knows H2O has some flaws.
Yes.
In fact, I might be talking about that movie very soon on my podcast.
Okay.
And so it's just, but altogether, I found it a much more satisfying film. However, my friend saw a test screening of the new movie before it was pushed to 2021,
Uh-huh.
and he raved about it, and he said it basically fixes everything that was wrong with the first one.
Y'all
So I'm
heard it here,
like,
folks. Y'all
I
heard it
don't
here
know.
first.
So
Okay,
now
look
I'm
forward.
excited, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, don't let me down. I'm so nervous. But I've just been told it's basically Michael just going on a rampage throughout the entire town.
Mm.
It's just like he goes to one house, kills some folks, goes to another house, kills some other. Like it basically just he's
It's gonna be Halloween
a
4 all
monster.
over. Because
Maybe so, yeah.
here's what I thought, because I saw Halloween 4 very recently last year, and I realized Halloween 4, I guess because after Halloween 3, was not well received at the time.
Yeah.
It was they tried the anthology, it didn't work, but Halloween 4 I guess kind of felt like a soft reboot of Halloween for
Sort
the
of,
first
yeah.
time, and it
Hmm.
felt like the Jurassic World of the Halloween series, because it's like, look here, it's the entire town this time, like they're
Yeah.
all getting murked and they're all having to band together to
Actually,
defeat
that
Michael Myers,
that
like.
does kind of sound like what I've been told is gonna happen. Like there's apparently like a kind of an angry mob that's trying to,
Mm,
capture him because
hmm.
because I guess it starts at the time where all the news is kind of starting to break about how he's killed some more people, and
Uh-huh.
so now they're really getting pissed off. And so I've just been told it's really a pretty strong film. So, but I don't know how
Okay.
they're gonna end the new trilogy. That's what I'm fascinated by. And I hate
I
the name Halloween Kills,
I heard
Halloween
it's just
Ends.
I heard those are just working titles.
I don't know. I'm scared. I
2020 has thrown a monkey wrench in every
yeah.
plan, so
I don't want to have to like walk up to a box office and be like, one for Halloween Kills. Like it just sounds weird. I don't know.
and then have like the box office attendee judge you like,
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so horror
Mm-hmm.
has been very progressive at times,
Yeah.
um, and also at the same time very problematic.
Yeah.
Yet, nevertheless, it seems to be almost a staple of gay culture, question mark. So,
Yeah.
where do you think that comes from?
Well, I've actually done a lot of thinking about this recently because in the past few years I've met a lot of gay horror fans, and I
Hmm.
used to always kind of think I was like some kind of like little unicorn because it seemed like everybody that was into horror was like some like buff dude that was like, yeah, I love tits and blood, and
Right.
all of a sudden I noticed all these other people that were like me. And what I think it is that I've thought that maybe the last girls standing in these kinds of movies kind of represent us in some way, because we're the ones who, when we're in high school and all of our friends are drinking and smoking and having sex and all
Hmm.
that stuff, we're kind of on the sidelines, which is a lot
Hmm.
like the girls in these movies. They're kind of
Hmm.
doing their own thing. They're more observant. They're just soaking everything in
Hmm.
and saying, one day I'll have that if I really want it. But right now, because I'm in high school, I'm going to try to play it kind of safe.
Hmm.
And I just think, that's why they survive, because they're not distracted by all this other stuff, and they can't kind of turn a blind eye to all the horror that's going on, whereas a
Hmm.
lot of other people in these films can. you know
Hmm.
a lot, like for example, like in A Nightmare on Elm Street, it's the final girl who's like, y'all did something in the past and I'm suffering because of what you did. My
Right.
parents,
Right.
my teachers, you brought this on me, which I think we can all relate to a bit now.
Yeah.
um and so these movies really do reflect society in a way, and how we're treated. And um it's kind of like, we always know as LGBT people
Hmm.
that we could die. Someone could come and beat us up or
Hmm.
kidnap us or do something horrible. And so we're always kind of on alert, a lot like the girls that survive these movies.
Yes.
Whereas our straight friends are just like, we're just going to party it up like there's no tomorrow, and who
Hmm.
cares what happens, because they don't need to care,
Right.
really, because they're not always going to be in danger necessarily.
Yes.
Whereas gay people have like a big red mark right on their forehead that just is like victim.
Right. Right.
And so we have to be more observant and cautious. And I think that's really what we relate to the most, is knowing that there could be some kind of a threat out there in the woods, and our friends aren't really going to see it, but
Hmm.
we always do.
Yes. Yes.
I at least that's what I've been able to kind of piece together, just knowing other gay horror fans over the years. That it seems like that's the thing that we all kind of have in common, is this sort of almost like hero worship of these people, usually women who survive these films.
Yes.
We can just really we can see a lot of ourselves in them.
Yes. Now, that was one more. I'm so sorry. Like you've brought this up now, but I that was one more thing that I forgot to mention. Another one of my favorite scary movies would have to be Alien.
Oh, that's a great
Because
great movie.
you talk about a strong female protagonist. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, God, Ellen Ripley.
The
But
best.
yeah, I think that I think that the a lot of the attraction to horror for gay people, I completely agree with you. I think you put it probably the best, but I also think that it comes from the like a lot of horror is like a supernatural force outside of yourself that you can't control, that um you have to watch somebody kind of deal with and overcome. And I also think that for some films that it's more so, an internal struggle, like any exorcism film.
Right.
I mean, I read an article recently about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, which I haven't
I was
seen.
just about to say, yeah, that is known as the gayest horror film of all time, and for good reason, because
Hmm.
it can totally be read 100% as a story about a teenage gay boy who doesn't want to be gay and is trying to fight this monster who's coming out of him,
Yes.
and then at the end he's saved by nice heterosexuality. But then there's a twist at the end where it's like he's not really out of the clear yet. It's really it is it's a fascinating film.
Mm.
Fascinating, very under appreciated, actually.
I need to actually watch all of the sequels. I have only seen the first
They're
Nightmare
pretty
on Elm
good.
Street.
I would say that franchise and the Child's Play are probably the two that probably stand up the best, because each one is a little bit different, and they actually do take some risks. Whereas like Friday the 13th, if you've seen one or two of them, it's basically the same thing. I mean, it's not,
Yeah.
except sometimes he's on a cruise to Manhattan, and I mean,
Well, and with the concept of Freddy Krueger, you have a lot of room to play around with.
mhm,
You don't
yeah.
have to worry about being taken seriously
Right.
at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I
um,
think at a certain point, I guess it was around part three, they were just like, let's just write him some jokes, like just, and so then he just becomes like this weird like vaudeville performer that's just like spouting out puns and stuff, and it's different, but look, I think it's fun, so I whatever.
well, let's take a quick break, but we will be right back. And we're back with Chris Moore. So yeah, when we were before the break we were talking about, why does, horror resonate with the LGBT community? Well, here's a question for you. Do we need more LGBT representation in horror and or more queer-centric horror films in general?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think people have underestimated the gay fan base of these movies, and they've been doing it for a long time, and I'm starting to see more of it, which I think is great.
Yes.
And it's happening slowly. It only really started to happen maybe 5 or maybe 10 years ago, but slowly, very very
Mhm.
slowly. And
Mhm.
now, I mean, there was just a film on Hulu, I think it was called Midnight Kiss, that was all gay men. That
Oh,
was the
okay.
entire cast was all gay men. And it's fascinating, and I think it just, I like seeing stories like that, because to me they're more realistic, and they're things that people can relate to, and maybe someone who's a kid who's gay in the South can
Mhm.
see something like that and say, oh hey, look, that's me.
Mhm.
I could do that, and that's what I think is really important, is trying to give kids an outlet to finally say, you know what, even if I am LGBT, I can have a life. I can be successful. I can have friends. I can fall in love. I can do everything that anyone else can do.
Yes.
And I think that's what's so important about representation, is because when I was a kid, there wasn't much. It was like Will and Grace
Yes.
and like Queer as Folk. That was pretty much it. And Queer as Folk was on Showtime, which we didn't have because my parents were just like, that's just porn. So, and I just recently started to watch that show, and I'm like, yeah, actually, it's kind of close to porn in some ways.
Mhm.
And so that's really all we had. And those are both what some would call problematic representations,
Mhm.
because in Will and Grace, the character of Will doesn't really have sex life. He's very sexless.
Yes.
Jack is just that typical effeminate queenie kind of type, and some people don't like
Yes.
that, and they think, oh, well, that's not all of us. Oh, and then queer as folk, everybody was kind of an asshole. So it was like those were our three choices. Were like, and so
Yes.
it didn't really show a very well-rounded view because every gay person is totally different. There's so
Hmm.
many that I've met that are totally different from one another. So I think that's the important part, is trying to get everyone's story told. And I'm starting to see it a bit more. It's starting to happen, and I'm trying to help because every film that I've made
Yes.
up to this point has a gay or lesbian character
Hmm.
at this point. So hopefully that'll help a bit. I don't know, for all the
Um,
tens of people that have seen my films. I don't know.
I was gonna say I mean there's so much ground to be broken
Mhm.
on LGBT, because there are so many different subsects of the LGBT plus community that
Yeah.
aren't even like I feel like the trans community has a lot for
Hmm.
that is fresh for a really
Hmm.
truly terrifying horror film. I mean, just the experience
Absolutely.
of being
Yeah.
a trans person in America, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So yeah. Also, I know that a while back you had mentioned you were thinking about what your next project could be, and you
Hmm.
had mentioned the one that I thought would be cool because you had listed a couple of options was a conversion therapy fairy tale. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still hoping that somewhere deep inside you that's something that you are working on.
Oh,
But
you're in luck because I think that is going to be my next one. I'm
oh,
not 100% sure, but it's the one that, because right now I'm working on 4 or 5 stories, and two of them have had multiple drafts,
mhm,
and one of them that's had all the drafts has been that one, and it's slowly coming together, and
mhm.
it's looking like, because I actually just did another draft last night. I completed one, and it's getting to the point where it's looking like that's going to be the next one, and I'm really excited because it's so different from anything I've ever done,
Mm.
and it's really emotional, and it's creepy, and I'm actually super psyched about it. It's probably the most excited I've ever been for a screenplay that I've done. I'm really excited about it.
Oh shit. Okay,
Really
well,
something special.
I'll definitely look forward to talking more about that later. But
Absolutely.
uh, your films, we're talking about your films now, are political without necessarily being preachy. That's one thing that I definitely appreciate. I mean, it's not necessarily that there is not room for being preachy, but you definitely strike a good balance. Do you feel like the genre is more conducive to sending a political message?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think it's that classic kind of spoon full of sugar helps the medicine go down thing,
Yeah.
because people aren't really thinking that you have a message necessarily when they're watching a horror film or a
Hmm.
comedy. Horror and comedy to me are the two best genres to use
Yes.
if you're really trying to say something. Because if you just do a drama about, say, I don't know, uh, gay rights, abortion rights, people are going to be like, "Oh, I don't want to see that. That sounds like something that we would watch in school," and it's just going to be people saying stuff like, "Did you know that 1 in 5 women will be blah 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 blah?" Like, and nobody
Right.
wants to see that. If they wanted to, they'd watch CNN, or they'd read an article. But to have a character just come right out and say, "Did you know that the statistics of this are," immediately when they start that I'm out. I'm like, this is just you trying to put some kind of a message in, and you see that a lot. I remember it was on Glee a lot. On the show Glee, there was always like, did you know that? I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my god, they're about to go into some preachy thing,
So,
and I can't stand that. It
um,
drives me nuts.
so let me go ahead and just say really quick, Glee has a common thread with some shows that I'm not that American Horror Story. Ryan
Mhm.
Murphy, who created Glee, also created American Horror Story. Have not seen Ratched yet. I still haven't seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's, in a box for later. But I can't tell you how disappointing American Horror Story became right around Coven. I mean, a lot of people really love Coven.
It's the
The
favorite of
camp
the gays.
the camp
And
was not for me in Coven. It was
uh,
inappropriate camp. It just came at all the wrong times.
I
Um
was into it for like the first half of the season,
mhm.
and then something happened where people kept dying and coming
Coming
back.
back? Yes.
And I was like,
Yes.
what are the stakes here? Like, why should I care? Why should I keep watching if someone is like decapitated, but it's okay. We're just gonna use some magic to bring them back. I'm like, well
Right.
then, so like, I need to know the exact rules of who can die and who can't, because some
Exactly.
people would just actually die and never come back. And I was like, well, why can't you bring them back? You know, it's like it just didn't. That was when the show kind of lost me, and I kind of stuck through it. I didn't make it through the last season. I watched like the first two or three, and I was like, this is you just don't extend a slasher film for a season that can barely get 90 minutes in. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. um and the next season I might watch one of, and if it's not for me, I'll just,
That was like I watched Cult all the way through, but honestly,
yeah.
that was like the last one that I watched all the way through because I, and I don't know what it was, but I was legitimately like, okay, like I'm interested to see like what are the clowns? What's this
Hmm.
like weird stuff that the truck is spraying in the neighborhood? And they
Yeah,
never answered half of the
they
questions they
didn't
set
answer that,
up.
did they?
They
No, they
never
didn't.
did. And
Wow.
then
Yeah.
it was really beating me over the head. It was beating
Yeah.
it literally whenever before she blows his head off and she's like, I'm a nasty woman. I was like, fuck me. Like, you, Ryan Murphy, I feel robbed of my time because of this whole fucking season.
And see,
Um,
that's the problem, is that it's stuff that I agree with. Like, I think that stuff needs to be discussed. However,
yes, but
it's not in that heavy-handed way where it's telling you, it's not showing you, it's telling you everything.
yes,
It's telling you how
yes.
you should feel, not showing you something and then giving you an emotional response. Which drives me nuts. And that is something I've had to deal with a lot with my work, especially with my last film, which is a, a about a school shooting. And in the first draft, there was a lot more of the kind of aftermath of that,
Mhm.
where it was like the character was getting all these threatening notes and stuff,
Mhm.
and people were saying that he wanted to take their guns away and stuff, and
Mhm.
it was sort of like, this is too much. It's not, I
Mhm.
don't think this is gonna get it home. And so I just condensed everything down to one scene,
Mhm.
and I think it worked so much better. It's just one scene where it's sort of mentioned and then it's gone, and then we can just go back to the story.
Right, and I think, well, and we're gonna get more into A Stranger Among the Living later on, but I think that ultimately the school shooting really was more of a backdrop than anything. I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it was more about the characters' struggle
right,
with the aftermath of that than it was about
yeah.
the because whenever okay, Will Lovern, the last guest on Out in the Woods, was actually that incel school shooter
He
in A
was.
Stranger Among the Living. So y'all check it out. It's on Amazon Prime now. But you I don't know, like there was so much opportunity for it whenever Will first told me like yeah, it's a horror film about a school shooter. I was and right before I auditioned, I was like I was like in one hand I was like, well, I don't is it going to be tasteful? You know what I mean? I was
See,
like,
that's
you know,
kind
like
of that's basically been the problem with every film that I've made up to this point, is when you read a blurb, just like a
mhm
log line about the film, it doesn't tell you how it's going to be handled.
mhm
So especially with blessed are the I'm sorry, blessed are the children,
uh-huh
that was about abortion. So everyone thought, oh, this is going to be some pro-life crap fest. And then with
mhm
Triggered, it was about social justice that's more performative than
mhm
actual real stuff.
Right.
And people got on my case because they hadn't seen the film and they thought, oh, you're going to make fun of people who are trying to make the world a better place. How dare you? And I'm like, no, you have to see the movie and you'll
Right.
see where I'm coming from. It's performative social justice, not social justice.
Right.
And so, and what is funny that you said it's basically a back a backdrop is that I've been critiqued for that too. They're like, okay, so all of these movies start out and they're going to have these big socially conscious questions and then they're going to just throw them by the wayside and tell a different story. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I don't want it to be all about like spouting out like, statistics about school shootings and
Yes.
abortions. I don't want that because nobody wants to watch that. Um, so it is kind of something to kind of get people into the theater, I guess. And then or their living rooms and just kind of think about this stuff a bit. I want them to think about it.
Mhm.
But I don't want it to be all that it's about. I want it to be about people going through an issue, not an issue, because
Yeah,
I saw that
exactly.
all the time in film school. Oh my God, every student film was like, I was raped and now I have AIDS and I'm pregnant, so I have to get an abortion. And it was a 5-minute movie. You cannot handle all those topics
Yes.
in 5 minutes. And they
It's
were trying to, but they didn't really build up the character. So you didn't care what happened to her because it was just kind of trying to be like abortion needs to be legal and AIDS is bad and rape is bad. And it's like, but you're saying all this in 5 minutes. You
yeah,
can't get all of the nuance
yes.
and you can't really show how it's impacted the character's life, which
Yes.
is what we're coming to see. That's what we want to see. We want to see a story about a human going through some kind of a trauma and either destroying themselves or rising above it. That's all we want from a story is just that experience. But people didn't seem to get that. So I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, and but also like, uh, it's like you say, you are a storyteller, and some people are story consumers, and
yeah,
they don't necessarily understand, once again, I guess the best word is the nuances of
right.
storytelling. So,
Yeah,
um, they might not have even liked the film if you had made it a preachy film. I mean, at that
exactly.
point,
Yeah,
you might as well have just made a documentary about,
yeah,
so
right.
anyway, also that American Horror Story season one address kind of did
Oh, the school
addressing,
shooting thing.
yeah, and
I
not,
actually remember that being a little controversial too, because they were like, "Is this handling this in a tasteful way?" I seem to remember there were some articles somewhere about that. I don't know.
but I mean, I think they kind of did a similar thing to what you did, in which case
Yeah,
they just kind of it was a part of the story and they kind of just
yeah,
folded it in. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It was more
And
about the character,
they
so.
didn't really show it, which I think is also a choice I decided to make. I said, because when I first started, I thought, well, maybe we should actually show some kids being killed, and I just thought, I think the aftermath is fine, and I think there was going to be a scene where Will was going to like blow his brains out on camera, and
Hmm.
I just decided we didn't need that. But now it's like no one really knows what happened to his character, so maybe I should have actually done that. Reshoot.
Rishi, Will,
Yeah.
hey, it's time for the anniversary edition,
Yeah, that'll be in the special Blu-ray cut. I don't
the
know.
director's cut.
Yeah.
So, do you think a lot of your work is affected by your environment? I would like to say,
Yeah.
blessed are the children. I know you live in Jackson,
Hmm.
and for those of you in the listener verse that don't know, audience, Jackson, Mississippi is the only place where there is an abortion clinic
Hmm.
in the state of Mississippi. So once again, if you require any kind of Planned Parenthood services like
Yeah.
that,
Hmm.
you have to travel to Jackson, and it is heavily, heavily always at all times being protested.
Yeah.
Um, I don't let me not say heavily, but there's always at least one street preacher out there
Mm-hmm.
waiting for someone to go
Ugh.
in. So I know
Yeah.
that I'm sure that that definitely had an effect for Blessed Are the Children.
It really did. It really did. Weirdly enough, a friend of mine whose house we used for locations in Triggered and Stranger is the head of this group that goes and they defend the girls that go in there, and
Mm.
they kind of escort them in. She's a wonderful woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I mean it kind of most of my films deal with some kind of there's always some sort of religious aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always being a little critical of how certain people in the South choose to preach,
Mm-hmm.
because I think they drive people away more than they actually bring them in. And
Mm-hmm.
and also just the issue of repression, which is huge in the South. I think
Yes.
there's repression's probably the one theme I can say is in all of my films. Someone is repressed, and that's why their life sucks, or that's why they're acting out, or that's why they are a violent psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
There's always some piece of that in there. And I think just the South is a very repressed place because we never really say what we mean. It's like that's kind of it's sort of frowned upon to actually have an opinion that's a little bit different than everybody else's, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of kind of like fake smiles and pleasantries and stuff like that. And we don't really just say what we feel. And I think that's a huge problem
Yes.
because it doesn't lead to a very good life, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the South. That's this, and I'm sure it's many other places too, but having really only lived in the South. I mean, I went to North Carolina for school, but even that's sort of the South, right? I don't know.
Right, right.
So it's I've really seen how repression is in the South, and it's horrifying.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's why, I mean, even as someone who is not a black person, that's why I think Get Out resonates with me still in a way
Oh yeah,
because I think that, like you talk about how people like, oh, we're all so pleasant, oh, we're all
hmm
very, that southern hospitality, we're all welcoming, but like just below the surface, I mean, there's
there's that little piece
yes.
that's just makes you feel uncomfortable, and
Yes.
it goes back to the same thing that I was talking about before, where you have people who will say that they're on your side, but then they're going to vote for someone
Yes.
who's not, because it doesn't really affect them,
Yes.
you know. So that's the problem, is that you have to start to teach people that we're all in this together, and it's for our best interest to vote
Yes.
for the person who's going to bring us the closest together and not
Hmm.
drive us apart. And some people just, they're very short-sighted, and they can only really see how this is going to affect them right now.
Hmm.
They can't see the big picture, and it's just it drives me nuts. I can't can't handle
Well, let's move a little bit
it.
out of those waters for a second.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, what is something that scares you um in real life?
Oh, well, I'm much more scared with like the idea of losing one's mind, or
Mm.
I identity, or I'm not really scared of like monsters or demons or anything, you know. It's
Hmm.
I think the scariest stuff is the most realistic stuff. Like when you start to doubt yourself, or can no longer live a truthful life. That's just
Yes.
creeps me out. There's just something about that, because you see it all the time. And I was really trying to address that a bit in Stranger, where there's these sort kind of zombies, I guess, but really
Hmm.
the zombies to me are just people in small towns
Hmm.
that don't seem to, they just sort of peaked in high school and just don't really they never evolve again, and
Right.
they're basically the living dead. They just
Yes.
don't really have a purpose anymore, because they're kind of they're stuck. They've been
Yeah.
frozen in time in some way, and they're not evolving, they're not growing, they're not being better people. And that's nothing against people that live in small towns. I mean, but
Right.
because there are some that are wonderful people that keep growing every day and just being fantastic, but it's just the people that refuse to see other people's opinions and stuff like that. It's kind of scary to me. And people who have blind faith in people they shouldn't trust, just
Yes.
authority in general is something I've always thought should be earned and not just handed to
Yes.
anyone that says, well, I'm in charge here. And then everyone's like, well, I guess
Yes.
I should just listen to this guy. It's like, but why? Like, why are we paying
Yes.
attention to him when he doesn't seem to have any good ideas, or he's a bad person? And it's stuff like that. It's how easily society can actually fall apart when we start to go down that path. That's what really scares me a lot.
Yes. I was gonna say all of that stuff scares me. I think what scares me the most, would probably be isolation.
Mm.
I mean that, and that can take on many forms, like getting lost somewhere. That scares me.
Oh yeah.
Uh, you know, or just the fact of being alone forever. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Or
Yeah.
not have, or being isolated, even, I mean, you can be isolated and still have people that see you every day. You can still, but
Right.
I mean, I think that's part of what, scares me about getting older,
Hmm.
is how many people will you have left whenever you get there, and how many
Right.
people will truly care for you at that point. I don't know. It's one of those things. And if you're able-bodied enough, will you be able-bodied enough to get out and meet people, stuff like
Oh
that. I
God,
mean,
it's
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 just,
horrifying to even think about it. Just like especially the idea of maybe having to go to like a nursing home where you don't know anybody, and
yes.
like that to me is like, oh, that's hell. I don't think that would be fun.
When people have to start making decisions for you,
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
that's when it just, I don't know, that is horrifying. I mean, not to get too personal, but like my grandfather has dementia, and last year we had to put him in a nursing home. And the thing is, like, it's better for him. It really is, but
Yeah.
like, I don't want to, I hope to God I never have to be in that position one day,
Right.
because I don't know. It's just, it's scary that your own body would do that to you. That your
Yeah,
own
it's
mind.
my mom has recently started trying to make plans for all that stuff, and I'm like, Mom, you can still walk, you're healthy, like.
Right.
And it's starting to concern me because I'm like, I don't know what my plans are going to be if she suddenly, gets super sick. And it's
Right.
one of those things I don't think you're ever really prepared for, and yet it happens to just about all of us at some point, and yet we're never really prepared for it. It's like it's one of life's cruel little jokes, that
Yes.
there's a few of them that you just have to laugh at because they're so cruel.
Yeah.
You're just like, why? Like, why does this have to happen? Ugh, it's terrifying.
So, okay, not in a realistic sense, what
Mhm.
horror element scares you the most? So, like, fictionally, what horror
Oh,
element scares you the most?
fiction. Anything with like, because I'm terrified of stuff like Rosemary's Baby and the Stepford
Mm,
Wives, where it's basically someone trying to make someone else seem like they're insane when
mm-hmm.
actually this shit's really happening.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the sort of gaslighting stuff like that scares
Yes.
me because I really do think that happens every day. Maybe not in the
Yeah.
sense of like, oh, you're not really carrying Satan's baby, sweetheart, but like,
Right.
but there's more subtle things that happen, and so that's the stuff that really tends to freak me out the most, is just people trying to make others seem like they're crazy. That's I
Yes.
oh I hate that. That
Or
freaks me out.
which is another element of Hereditary that I
Yeah.
found
Yes. Very
so
much so.
fucking
Yeah. Hmm.
crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally feel that. I don't know. I think for me, and this is just so vanilla, but like the supernatural, like I can do slashers all day and not feel a thing because like I'm like I could run realistically. I mean, unless you played the Friday the 13th video game, in which case you know that Jason actually has powers where
Oh no.
he can fast travel to
Oh,
places
great.
to
That's just what he
to
needs.
catch them.
Great.
But the supernatural, that's another thing. Like, I don't know if you listened to the episode where I talked about my exorcism, but I did have someone at a church try to exorcise me, and I believed it. I mean, I believed that I had a gay demon inside of me,
Oh
and
God.
there is nothing I can tell you more terrifying than that month where I believed that there was this supernatural entity, which I believe in the supernatural, everybody. I just want you to know I do believe in the supernatural. The supernatural entity that was trying to fucking kill me. You know what I mean? Like, just imagine, your mind always has a way of playing tricks on you. But like imagine like having someone convince you that like every waking moment there's something like right in the corner watching you and
Mm.
waiting to
Oh
yeah.
God.
So, yeah, that's those are the elements that scare me. Now, they have to be done right too because like not every supernatural movie is actually scary to me.
Oh
But
no, of course not.
right, of course
Yeah.
not. But
There
um
are some that are some doozies, let me tell you.
right, exactly. But I mean, sorry, Ari Aster, I'm not being paid by Ari Aster, but like once again, Hereditary. That's a perfect. You don't even see the entity or anything,
Mm-mm.
but you know that it's there. I mean, the Haunting of Hill House. That was another
Oh,
fantastic one,
wonderful show. Yeah.
wonderfully
Mm.
layered and everything.
Yeah.
And there's a fun game you can play, audience and Chris, if you didn't know,
Oh yeah.
where
Trying to find all of the ghosts that are oh my God.
yes,
Someone pointed some out and I literally thought I was gonna pee my pants. I was like, that
yes,
how are they doing that? I was like,
and
oh
that was true. That's truly scary to me because
yeah.
like it's a fun little Easter egg game, but at the same time, it
Yeah.
kind of spooks you because you're like,
Because it
what if
says that they're always there. Like they're
right?
always there.
And you're
It's
just
scary.
like, in my real life, what if that was, the case? Like, what if there's like someone like right in the corner and you just never know?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
so yeah,
terrifying.
yeah. But yeah, that's the fictional horror element that gets me. Um, um, so let's talk about something a little less scary,
Okay.
something a little more steamy.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh. All
If
right.
you could sleep with any slasher, which one would you choose and why?
Oh God. Well, I mean, like Freddy and Jason and Michael and stuff, they look like they probably don't bathe very often. So I'd probably have to throw them out. I don't think that would be very pleasurable. And Freddy's got those claws, and that's just not going to be
Yeah.
practical.
And the skin. I mean,
Yeah, and the nasty skin. It's just not, maybe like someone from Scream, like Billy and Stu. They seem like
mhm.
nice guys. I
90s
mean, they're
Matthew
crazy.
Lillard was
Yeah,
like, I mean, aces.
a bit of a snack. So I could deal with that. There we go. I'll have a three-way with Billy and Stu.
There we go. There we go.
As long as they don't kill me. I don't
I
know.
was gonna say, well, no, then you get to start wearing the ghost face outfit, and you can
Oh,
start
fun.
killing
Okay.
people. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. Just don't go. Whenever you reveal that it's you, don't be the stupid one and stab yourself to
Oh,
prove that you're
right.
crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
um, or what was it? Did the TV fall on his head? What? Oh my
It
God.
did. Yeah,
Yes.
it did.
Yeah. So,
It did.
don't let that happen. Watch out for, but it's a flat screen TVs now, so it really probably wouldn't affect you that much unless it was a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, they couldn't really remake that same scene these days because it would just like bounce right off of his head and they'd be like, oh, well,
Interesting
shit.
way. I was going to say interesting way to remake it though. Have it be a mounted flat screen and slice their head maybe like or like
Ooh, that would be
like get
fun.
lodged in. Yeah.
I'd be into that.
There we go.
Notes for Blumhouse if they're ever going to remake it, which with the way things are going, give it 5 years.
I
I
was
don't, I
gonna
don't know.
say, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I would probably sleep with Jason Voorhees. The bathing thing, just I'll throw a bath bomb in Crystal Lake And whenever he
Okay.
rises from the waters, you know, he'll come through that soap and he'll be washed off. He's very strong. He's, you know, Michael Myers, you know, he's strong too, but you can see that it takes a little effort for him to do
Yeah.
his lifting. It would
Well,
be
he's in his
effortless.
60s now, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's
Jason Voorhees is eternal. Uh,
exactly.
and he has a great relationship with his mother.
It
Um,
is really sweet. It's really
and
sweet.
not in the Norman Bates way. So like,
No, yeah.
and he'll keep the mask on so I don't even have to see anything.
That's true. And there was one Friday the 13th where Jason had a very nice ass. So maybe, I don't
I
know.
was just about to say, I mean,
There was one where I was like, "Oh, huh,
I was gonna say he
nice
has like he's a very
nice
built
physique."
killer. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
mean
Could
he's
be
the
worse.
Adonis that
Yeah.
is killing, you know, yeah. Um I guess it puts a whole new meaning to wet ass pussy. But
Yeah, I guess so.
um so now in the same vein we were talking about a Scream remake. Which horror remake do you think you would absolutely kill? No pun intended.
Oh, it's it's a tie between The Fog and Prom Night.
Oh.
Those two movies really made me want to hurt someone. That was bad. Bad, bad movies.
I have only seen the Fog remake, so
I'm sorry for
um
your loss.
well actually the context of my question was actually if you could do a horror remake, which one
Oh.
would you yes, which would you absolutely destroy?
Oh,
Which would yeah.
kill to do? Oh, that's easy too. Okay, it's one called Curtains. It's from 1983, and this was a very troubled production. They had to
Hmm.
reshoot and rewrite so much of it, and the final product kind of shows that a bit. And it's a movie about six actresses who go to this big shot dir- director's house to
Hmm.
try to win this great part, and
Hmm.
then one by one they're killed. And it's just such a fun story, and I think I could bring a lot to it. And I actually tried to get the rights to do it, and
Really?
I could never find who actually owned the rights. I got through like five different people that were like, well, maybe you should ask this person, and then they were like, well, I don't know, ask that person, and then it just spiraled, and then I could never find the rights. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remake it, but change so much of it that it doesn't seem like a remake. So it's like the same sort of concept and like themes, but not the same movie. Like it wouldn't
Right.
be called Curtains. It would be called something else. But
I saw the cut of the trailer that you did.
oh right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, it looked, I mean, I still haven't seen Curtains, but it looked very good.
Well, thank you. That was a passion
Hmm.
project for me because I love the movie, and it's one of those that had so much potential, but it just doesn't quite work altogether. I think that's why I kind of want to redo it because I was like, I love this concept so much, but it didn't have like a very cohesive kind of a feel. So
Right.
I would love to do that one day.
Um, that's really cool. I honestly don't know which horror film I would remake because I guess like for the most part, like I'm pretty sure all of the ones that I have really enjoyed that I would love to work on are just perfect in their own right. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't feel right about remaking, you know,
Right. Yeah.
like I think that here's the only thing, Jaws, the movie
Hmm.
Jaws is ripe for a sequel or a reboot right now. I think that's, and I only say that because the original is a cinematic and storytelling masterpiece. I
Hmm.
understand that. However, the shark movie genre has gone downhill, and I mean, honestly, and I know the trend. If you've seen Up to Jaws: The Revenge, you know that making more Jaws sequels didn't exactly pan out. Now, Jaws 2 was actually very good. I think Jaws 2 is great. But yeah, I think we need a good either Jaws reboot or a Jaws remake right now. And you can even set it back in
Actually,
this. You can actually set it
yeah.
back in the 60s and 70s. I don't think Jaws would necessarily work in the modern age, but
I'm sort
definitely
of shocked that they haven't because the last sequel was what, like 87 or something.
yes.
So that's longer than I've been on this earth. So it's
Yeah.
been 30 plus years. So I think it's time for something. I because it's now I'm hearing they're trying to remake the Exorcist, and I feel like if they're gonna do that, then everything's on the table. So I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, I could see it being potentially interesting at least.
Yeah,
I don't know.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um hold on just a second. Sorry, my mom's at Kroger. She wants to know which Mios I want. So, everybody drink Mio. You don't have to have that soda. You can enjoy water with all the flavors of the wind. This is not one that I actually wrote down,
Mhm.
but what is an example of horror movie fodder that you enjoy? Like what's like one like horror movie that's not really like that good, but like you enjoy it?
Oh, well, okay. There's one called Pieces
Okay.
that is a American Spanish Italian co-production, which should tell you
Oh my
everything right there.
God.
It's from like 82 and it's all been dubbed, and the dialogue is stunning. Stunning.
Mm.
It is a movie that should feel very misogynistic because it's all about this guy who is trying to recreate this pornographic puzzle that his mom threw out when he was a kid. So he kills her when he was a kid, and then 40 years down the road, he kills all these co-eds and takes their body parts and stitches them into this perfect woman. And so you would think, well, that sounds kind of trashy and sexist, but it's the way the movie's told that it's so stupid. It's just, I don't see how anyone could ever find it even remotely offensive because it's so dumb.
My
It's like
God.
the acting is out of this world bad. The dialogue sounds like it was beamed in from some other planet. It's just unbelievable. I highly recommend it to anyone, whether you like horror or not, because it's mostly a comedy. It's not supposed to be. And we used to watch it in film school every Halloween. They would play this print of the film, and everyone would just laugh and
Ugh.
just carry on. It's, I don't know why it's not up there with like Showgirls or The Room or
Uh-huh.
anything like that, because it has a similar vibe where it's like they're taking it really seriously, but should they? I mean, really? It's fascinating. I highly recommend it if you would like a laugh, because it's really great.
I'll have to look for it. My answer to this is Grave Encounters 1 and 2.
I
Um,
still need to see those.
okay, so the thing is, here's the allure of Grave Encounters 1 and 2 for me. It's the idea that like the ghost hunting show actually goes the way you want it and you
Mhm.
actually see like these horrific like ghost supernatural beings, except it's so terrible because like ultimately the plot is so convoluted because like the asylum basically traps them in there, and the only way, like, spoiler alert, okay, like the only way basically they can get out is if they make like a sacrifice. And
Oh.
but here's the thing, all of the ghosts look super generic. I mean, that's where you see that's where we get the if you've ever seen the image of like that asylum, that person dressed like they're from an asylum, like all contorted with like the really like
Oh,
big like
yeah.
black mouth and like white eyes, that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
So like it's a good jump scare movie. It's heavy on the jump scares, but I think but they're so much fun because you're just like, how many times have you and your friends just been fucking around and like gone to like an abandoned place and been like, oh, this is so scary? Like it's just wish fulfillment in a way.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's my answer to that because they're not really that great. Especially Grave Encounters 2 is basically that Grave Encounters in the universe of Grave Encounters is a fictional movie because they find the footage and it's supposedly a fictional
Oh,
movie.
God.
And then someone goes and tries to recreate it at the same place, and then the same thing basically happens. So,
Sounds very creative.
yes. So what genre other than horror have you really been wanting to try your hand at?
I mean, I'd love to do a musical, but I don't have any. original music. I don't know
Mm.
anybody who could write like an actual full musical.
Uh-huh.
But that would be fun just to see if I could really.
Hmm.
And or to adapt one that's been done. You know, I would love to do a film version of Gypsy, even though it has been done a few times, but
Hmm.
in my opinion, it's not been done well. So I want to do it. Um, and then a comedy, definitely comedy, because I mean, all of my films have moments of that, but I just wrote a play, like a full play that's just straight comedy, and so
Oh.
I'd like to get that up at some point because it's really fun to write. It's just and it's fun to watch. It's fun to perform. I love doing it. But it's just like when you're trying to sell an independent comedy film, it's
Hmm.
impossible because you have to have big name stars, and even then, they don't really sell that well, especially overseas, because comedy doesn't always translate well to other
No.
countries. Yeah.
Yeah. Different cultures have different senses of humor. That's just all there
Hmm.
is to it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, that's and you do have you have a good wit. From what I have seen, you have a good sense of humor. I mean, it also takes good comedic timing to be able to fit comedy into a horror film correctly. Like once again, that's why I'm just American Horror Story doesn't do it for me because I just feel like sometimes the timing is way off for some of the
Right. Yeah.
that they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, um, you have a podcast of your own. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it.
What's called the Homos on Haunted Hill,
Mhm.
and it was started by a Facebook friend of mine, Kevin, who contacted me during the pandemic and was like, "Do you want to do a podcast?" I was like, I guess I could try it. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it,
Mhm.
and we started doing this, and we just talk about movies that we really like that maybe haven't gotten as fair of a shake as we would have liked them to have. And
Mhm.
we talk about a lot of overlooked gems, as we like to call them,
Mhm.
and we have like certain themes every month too. So we'll do like, you know, a sorority slasher theme, and
Mhm.
or a witch theme or something. This month we're doing the Halloween franchise. We're
Mm,
not doing all of them, but
right.
we're slowly, you know, gonna start to talk about some of them, some that we feel like need a little bit more of a boost. So we're not going to talk about like the first one because everyone knows everything about
Right.
that
Right.
one. So we're going to talk about some that maybe need a little bit more love and care. Yeah,
Mhm.
and and so yeah, it's just been really fun. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to make it up as I go. And some people really seem to like it, so I guess we're doing something right. I don't know.
I totally feel that. I'm just following the formula I think will work. um, but yeah, no, I mean it's really, guys, seriously, audience, like it's seriously entertaining stuff, and I'm glad that you and Kevin have watched so much horror movies because I don't know if I'll ever get around to watching all of them. So it's nice to be able to hear about these and be like, "Oh, okay." Um, so
Yeah,
yeah.
we're just huge dorks, I guess, just watching some things some have never even heard of, and but that's the fun part, is just and trying to balance, you know, more mainstream films with some that maybe like two people have actually heard of. That's
Right.
kind of fun too.
Right.
um because if I had my way, it would just be all like really random obscure stuff. But you know,
Uh-huh.
we have to keep the people engaged, and sometimes they want
Yes.
us to talk about something that came out last year, you know, or whatever. So it's
I was
fun
gonna
though.
say you guys recently did, was it last week's episode about the third movie in the oh, what is it called? The Mother of
Oh, the Three
Tears?
Mothers. Yeah,
Yeah, the Three
yeah,
Mothers.
yeah.
Um,
Yes.
I have only seen Suspiria.
Hmm.
So I'm very interested to hear this episode. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and I'm one of the five people out there who actually enjoys the Suspiria remake more than the original. I know
I
that that
like
is
it too. I think it's a good movie. It's so different, but that's
it
what I
is.
love about it, is that it does what a good remake should do, and it takes the basic plot and it goes in a completely different direction. And I really liked it for that. I thought
I
that was smart.
I honestly think like it explains a lot more than the original Suspiria did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
I
think it
think it
goes into a
does.
lot more detail than the original
Yeah,
Suspiria did. And
absolutely.
and also I just like the Cold War Berlin Wall backdrop. I think that
Mhm.
was a really effective interesting choice. And the kills are much more violent and gut
It's
turning.
oh, I mean that one. What's her name? Olga. Oh,
Yes, the dancing.
Jesus. Ugh.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes.
That's the thing is that it's more of an almost David Cronenberg style of horror where it's all about the body being contorted and
Yes.
falling apart, and it's I found it very effective. It
Yes.
was ugh,
And
ugh.
while it doesn't have the same beautiful aesthetics as
Mhm.
the original does, or the score by
Right.
Goblin,
Yeah.
it definitely, I mean, I love the dance scenes and because
Yeah.
like they're actually at a dance academy and I think they really only did like one or two
There
scenes
was
with
like one
dancing.
scene in the original,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think it was great.
I liked it too.
Yeah. So your latest film, A Stranger Among the Living, is now on
Mhm.
Amazon Prime. That was very recent,
Yes.
actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, a few days ago, yeah. It just came out.
So, in your words, what is A
Mhm.
Stranger Among the Living about?
Well, it's about a teacher who has a premonition of a school shooting, and he decides um to not be there for it. And it turns out to be real, and he has to deal with the consequences of what happened, which basically amounts to him being stalked by these sort of ghoulish zombie like people who want to bring him to the other side, where
Hmm.
everybody's dead. So,
Yes, and it's once again like the school shooting is kind of the backdrop. I kind of
mhm,
saw it. I kind of saw, and this is just my interpretation, so I could be wrong, but my interpretation was more so about like how guilt kind of gnaws away at you,
mhm,
like
yeah,
survivor's guilt,
exactly.
and also the exasperation of having survived something so traumatic and still not being able to see any change as a result of
Hmm.
it.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, no, I think it was a really, really good, definitely, I mean, definitely different than a lot of the horror films I've seen before. So,
Oh, good,
yeah,
good.
yeah. Um, yeah. So, and, my Venmo is $20. I'll go ahead and I'll get that from you now. No, but really, I mean seriously, not only I mean like not only watch it just for the experience of seeing it, but also to like support a local artist. I mean, really and
Yeah,
truly
yes,
like
please.
it's real I mean, it's good stuff and we just need more unique and different voices out there. It's
I
always
think so
important,
too.
So,
I think
yeah.
so. This movie's really fascinated me because it seems like everyone has a different interpretation of it, which wasn't really what I was expecting, but it's been kind of delightful because I think that means people actually engaged with it, because they're actually
Mhm.
trying to think, okay, what were they trying to say here? What does this mean? What is this
Mhm.
about? I mean, I had my ideas about what it was supposed to say, but then I've heard all these fascinating theories, and I'm like, what? Like, this is so cool because like no one has those for my last two movies because those are pretty straightforward for the most part, but this one's more it's more about the atmosphere and the mood and stuff like that, and
Yeah,
it's different.
because when I watched it, well, I mean, the zombies I think are the most interesting artistic aspect of the film because I just when I was watching it I was like, so are these like supernatural beings? Are these zombies? Which I'm not going to
Yeah,
spoil the ending for you, but you kind of get an idea of what they are by the
right.
time the movie ends. Then you can be like, "Oh, okay." Then you have like a really great moment of clarity. Really
Yeah,
beautiful melancholy ending, but definitely I don't know, it was one of those things where you just take the ride and I don't know, the I think that's the zombies as you call them are kind of what's the biggest thing that's left up for interpretation.
Right. Yeah.
So
Like, and I
yeah.
think that was originally I was going to be a little more obvious about it, and the original ending was very different,
Mm.
and then it just kind of thought I might go in a different direction here,
Mm-hmm.
but actually I think the original ending was actually more depressing. So I was like, I don't want it to be too depressing. So I was actually kind of more of a I actually made it a little bit lighter actually. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of bizarre. Um, but yeah, it's just been really cool to just hear what everybody thinks about it, and how everybody's like, are they ghosts? Are they psychotic manifestations of something? Like I love
Right.
that. I
And
love
that's
that so much.
Yeah, and I think that's what really, once again, that's what makes the ending so effective. Just to Anyway, you had a really we talked about gay representation earlier. You actually co-starred in the movie as the lovable gay character. Um, I think you did a really fantastic job of, I mean, of course it's easy. It comes natural for you to play a gay man because you play one every day. But also
Sometimes not particularly well, but I do.
but I think that the way that you kind of added his psychology to it was really interesting. That was a lot of interesting stuff to chew on because he basically the character that he plays is also part of a survivor of trauma support group. Um and you don't really get to know a whole lot about that
No.
character's trauma, but
Yeah.
you get to see how they psychologically cope with that trauma through comedy, and it's really great stuff. Yeah, and I especially love the dinner scene where you invite him over for
Oh,
dinner, and I just I just thought that I thought the whole conversation y'all had on the front porch was one where I was like, "Oh my God, like I know
yeah.
people like that, and I don't know. It's so yeah.
It's strange because I do think you saw a cut that has since been trimmed a bit. So that entire scene on the porch is now gone. Like that's been cut out of the
What?
movie. Yeah, yeah, it's been cut because the pacing, it was killing the pacing. And I really think because I had an idea that it didn't need to be there, but I was like, people are probably gonna want to know like what makes this character tick. So I thought, well, we need the scene, right? And so we shot this scene, and the entire time I was cutting the film, I was showing it to everybody and just being like, is there anything I can cut?
Hmm.
Because there's this one scene and it's on the porch. I don't know if it really needs to be there. And everybody was like, no, I really like the scene. Like maybe you can trim it down a bit, but I still think you should keep the scene. So I did keep it
Hmm.
for the premieres. And but I had trimmed it a bit. And then finally a critic said, I loved the film, but it there were some parts where I felt like the pace was a little slack. And I said, was it on the porch scene? And he said, yeah. And I said, finally, someone is telling me what I always knew, but they wouldn't tell me. And I think it's because it was my big scene. And I think they were like, well, I don't want to tell him to cut his big scene, because
but
that's rude.
I,
But I was like, but if it does need to be in the movie, and if it's slowing it down, then please do. Like, I'm not going to be offended by it, because I do think it's a great scene. I just don't think it needs to be in the movie, and so it's been trimmed out.
Right, and I guess like art is subjective. I guess I'm the one person who actually did legitimately think like, oh well, this scene definitely has its place in the movie. But
Right?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, I like how you humanized that character without having to like I don't know, make them, I don't know. Because once again, there still is an issue sometimes with gay characters
Hmm.
in horror where they're still kind of, queeny or,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's really, really fantastic stuff.
Well,
So,
thank you.
oh my
Thank you.
God, of course. Last question.
Oh
If you could go back in time and tell your adolescent self any words of
oh
wisdom or
gosh.
comfort, what would they be?
Um, I think I would tell myself that there's no rush. Don't feel bad for being a late bloomer, because there's not really a prize if you win first.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks that there is, but there's not. And so take things slow and enjoy it. And I don't know, I guess just hmm, I don't know, just hmm. I guess that also it's never too late to change your mind about anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're not set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
I've my taste buds have changed. My taste in movies has changed, and it didn't really start until my 20s. I was pretty much the same person until then, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
But then things just change, and you can't be scared of that change, and you have to roll with it, and just don't be stuck in your ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the main thing I would say.
All right. Well, do you have any shout outs for my audience? Anything you'd like to promote that we
I
haven't
don't know.
already promoted, I
Jeez, I
guess?
don't know. Well, my other two films, Blessed Are the Children and Triggered, are also on Prime, so check that. I think they're also on Tubi if you have that. Uh, and A Stranger Among the Living just came out, and it's on Prime, and I hope you enjoy it. It's a really great movie for Halloween season because it's really spooky, and apparently it's rated 13 plus on there, so I guess it's technically PG-13.
Um,
So
I
bring the kids. I don't know.
there's like one specific shot where
Yeah.
I was like, oh, in the movie theater, and
Yeah.
that was specifically the shot where you're FaceTiming or he's FaceTiming his fellow teacher, and she gets like her
Oh,
brains blown
there's
out, and I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
That's a little
I
R,
don't know.
but
I was
the
gonna say
rest is yeah.
I don't know if a 13-year-old should, but
I don't
okay,
know.
like
Yeah, I mean,
um
apparently Amazon's like bring on the teens. I don't know, but
but Jeff
um,
Bezos,
you know, well,
he is all knowing and all seeing.
I think one of his drones is listening in right now. Yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
Um
but yeah, so apparently they thought it was great for the whole family. So
sit
bring the
down
kids.
sit
Bring the
down with your
kids.
grandparents and put on A
Yes.
Stranger Among the Living.
Yes, I think there's a few f bombs in there. That's really about it, though. It is a fairly clean film, especially compared to my last two. This is like a family film, so I'm
Mm,
I'm sort of proud that at least now I've got something that my whole family can watch in some ways. Because
yes.
my last one especially, Triggered, is just one that I don't think many people in my family cared for, to be honest.
Mm.
They were like, why are there two men having sex on screen and there's all these f-bombs, and it was a thing. It was bad.
They got triggered.
They
So,
got
I mean,
triggered by Triggered.
they
So
did. Um, you're also really quick before we go. You recently won an award for
oh, I
A
did.
Stranger Among the
Yeah,
Living.
I
Yeah.
did. Yeah, for the Houston Horror Film Festival, I got Best Director, which is crazy town. I don't know how. And that was awesome. I just got the award in the mail last week, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So
Oh my God.
nice to have something on a shelf. It's always cool.
Yes. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking time to be here out in the woods.
Thank
Um,
you.
I would love to have you on again because I feel like we could
Sure.
talk about, I mean, you could talk about horror movies for hours. That's what you do
I
on your
could. It's
podcast.
dangerous. So
So, um, definitely look forward to seeing you again and have a great day.
you too.
I hope you're not too scared, for there is still a whole month left of HalloQueen. Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching yet another episode of Out in the Woods. If you enjoyed it a lot, go ahead and subscribe so you can know and see every time a new episode is released. Hit that bell. Like, comment, please comment. I want to hear from y'all. I want to know you're there. You can follow me on Instagram at ONTW_podcast. That's also my Twitter handle. Go to Out in the Woods on Facebook, and sign up for LGBT mail, because y'all, that's a thing. Just follow the link tree in my bio on Instagram and Twitter, and hit the sign up button on Facebook. And You're golden. Guys, thank you so much as always for coming out in the woods and into my closet.